church, they've got their Bible, they know the lingo, they put on a good show, they convince just about everyone, but you know what? God knows what's up. Because you can fool all of the people some of the time, you can fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool God any of the time. And if you're living that double life, I know this about you without knowing you personally, I know it's miserable. Because you have too much of the Lord to be happy in the world, and you have too much of the world to be happy in the Lord, right? It's like a story I heard about a hunter that was out, and he wanted to kill a bear because he wanted a fur coat. So he saw a bear in the distance. He pulled out his gun, leveled his barrel down, got the bear in his sights. He was starting to squeeze the trigger, and the bear turned around and said, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question?" This is a true story, by the way. It's a joke. So the bear turned around and said, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question?" The hunter, holding his gun, said, "Yes, what?" The bear said, "What is it you want? Maybe we can work out something. Maybe we can negotiate." The hunter set his gun down. He said, "Well, I'd like a fur coat." The bear said, "Very good. I want a full stomach. Why don't we talk about it? Set your gun down there. Let's go over to the forest and we'll work it out." So the hunter set his gun down, walked off into the forest with the bear. Apparently the negotiations were successful because about 30 minutes later, the bear came back alone. Apparently they both got what they wanted. The hunter got a fur coat and the bear got a full stomach. That's how compromise works. That's how it works when you try to live in two worlds. Let me illustrate. I told you already about my son Christopher. He tried to live in two worlds. He saw how empty it was. He was a prodigal son who got right with the Lord, and thankfully was ready to meet him when the Lord called him home. But he had a younger brother, has a younger brother named Jonathan. Jonathan is 23. He's been raised in the church, heard the gospel his whole life, but he was kind of living that party life, trying to live in two worlds. And my son Jonathan is with me right now. Would you like to meet him? Okay, I'm going to bring him out. Jonathan, come on out. This is my son Jonathan. Here he comes.
How are you guys doing?
So Jonathan, let's go back to that day. That will be 1 year on tomorrow. Your brother Christopher was on his way to work in his car, and we heard about the accident. Hardest day in all of our lives. And tell me where you were at work when that happened, and tell me where you were at that point spiritually, and what impact that event had on you.
Yeah, well, you know, like you said, I was at work, and that night before, I was out partying. I was with a friend, and we were in a couple bars, and you know, over the past couple weeks, my brother Christopher had really been encouraging me to quit this double life. You know, you can't be honest with your parents, and we all have somebody we can be honest with who really knows who we are. And for me, that was my brother. And you know, he knew that I was still going to church, more to please my parents, and I was still living this party life. And he had really been encouraging me to quit that double life. He knew how miserable it was to be in both places. You know, he knew what it was like to not feel like you belong. And you know, that day at work, I found out from my foreman. He came and got me and brought me home, and I found out that my brother was taken to heaven that day. And you know, that was the hardest thing in my life. And he's the closest person to me, so you can imagine what that's like, losing something like that.
Christopher, you had said that you really, the night before, you were out partying and you were thinking, I really want to talk to my brother about this, and I want to get right with God. And I remember you saying that Christopher had said to you earlier, what's it going to take, you know, to get your attention?
Yeah, that's right. He had mentioned that to me. He had said, you know, what's it going to take for you to quit this double life? And you know, I just shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. And well, I know what it took now. And you know, I wish I could have my brother back, and I wish it would have taken that. But you know, I knew that after that happened, that I needed to honor my brother's advice, and I needed to honor that. And I knew the best way to do that would be to give my life over to the Lord. And you know, I've been struggling with different drugs and alcohol and smoking and all the stuff that goes with it. You know, I tried to quit multiple times on my own, and you know, there was times, you know, I said, God, take this from me, you know, and you know, I would stick with it, and I'd end up going back to it. But that day I told the Lord, you know, I said, God, I really want you to take this from me. And I proved to you and myself that I can't do this on my own. I put my trust in Him. And 1 year ago tomorrow, I've been clean and sober completely from everything, and only on the strength of the Lord.
You took practical steps too, didn't you, Jonathan? You went in your room and you got rid of all the junk, the paraphernalia, everything, right?
Yeah. You know, hours after it happened, I grabbed all that stuff in my hands and I just prayed that He would take it from me, and you know, I got rid of all of it. And you know, for a while I just had to cut myself off from those non-Christian friends that were dragging me down.
Yeah.
I had to make, you know, those Christian friends that were at church, you know, that always knew me as the empty shell at church, and you know, I wanted to be something else to them, and they were there to comfort me more than anybody else was.
Yeah.
So you know, as I did that, it began to get easier, and I didn't miss those friends as much. And the thing that helped me the most was I began reading my Bible first thing when I would get out of bed. I would pray and I would meditate and ask God to speak to me through His Word, and He's been faithful to do that. You know, the psalmist says in Psalm 119 verse 9, he says, how can a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to your word. With my whole heart I have sought you. Oh, let me not wander from your commandments. You know, he's asking himself, how can a young man live a clean life? You know, there's so many temptations, lust and partying, and you know, there's all that stuff the world has to offer. But he says, you know, how can a young man cleanse his way? By living according to your word, you know, by taking heed, by living a Christian life, by reading the Word of God and taking heed to it, by memorizing it. And that will replace that void and that want in your heart for those worldly things.
So now you're walking with the Lord. You're not living the double life anymore. Is it better how it is now, or was it better the way it was before?
You know, when you're out partying and you're in the moment, you can have a lot of fun. And those moments, I think we have all found, those of you who have been in them, they're fleeting. That next morning, it's gone. You can only think, you know, well, when's the next party? But living the Christian life, there's no remorse. The only high you're going to get is when you're sharing Christ with somebody else. You're perpetually not miserable. You're just, there's no way to explain it, but you have a real Christian joy. There's no remorse. You're so happy, and instead of wanting to hide about what you did the night before, you want to go and tell all your friends and family